The crystal champagne flutes caught the chandelier light as my father raised his glass, his voice carrying across the Gold Coast dining room. "To family," he said, and 30 relatives echoed the toast. Then he turned to me, his smile razor sharp. "Lena, since you've chosen to work for that legal aid clinic instead of the family firm, you're no longer welcome here." The room fell silent except for the soft clink of my mother cutting her credit cards in half. Within minutes, the butler was escorting me to the door, my phone buzzing with notifications of frozen accounts. My name is Lena Whitmore, and until that December evening, I'd believed family meant something more than stock portfolios and tax shelters. The dinner was supposed to celebrate Austin's engagement to Victoria Pemberton, a merger disguised as marriage that would unite 2 real estate dynasties. I should have known something was wrong when Mother insisted I wear the sapphire necklace Grandmother May had left me, the one that usually stayed locked in the family vault. The Whitmore mansion overlooked Lake Michigan, its windows framing the dark water like expensive paintings. I could smell the truffle reduction on the wagyu, hear the subtle scrape of sterling silver on Limoges china. My younger sister Sloane was discussing her latest gallery opening, carefully avoiding any mention of the controversial artist she'd been dating. Austin sat at Father's right hand, already practicing his role as heir apparent, his fiancée's 4-carat diamond catching the light every time she reached for her wine glass. "Before we continue the celebrations," Father said, standing again, his Armani suit impeccable as always, "there's a family matter to address." Gregory Whitmore never addressed family matters in public. Not when Austin crashed his Porsche at Northwestern. Not when Sloane's tabloid photos surfaced. This was theater, and I was apparently the star. "Lena has informed us she'll be joining the Northside Justice Clinic after passing the bar." His tone suggested I'd announced plans to join a terrorist cell. Defending criminals, fighting the very developments that built this family's foundation. They're not criminals, they're tenants facing illegal evictions. From properties that need development, progress. Lena, something the Whitmores have championed for 3 generations. He pulled out his phone, fingers moving with surgical precision. "But if you want to bite the hand that fed you, you'll do it without our support." The notifications started immediately. Chase Private Client Account Access suspended. American Express Black Card terminated. The family phone plan number disconnected. Each ping was another cut, precise and public. Mother Vivian Whitmore, who'd spent 30 years perfecting the art of charitable visibility, produced my cards from her clutch. The scissors appeared from nowhere. Maybe she'd planned this, and she cut through each one with deliberate slowness. My Northwestern University ID, my gym membership, the health insurance card, even my Metra pass. "The apartment lease ends this month," she said, her voice steady as her charity gala speeches. "The furniture belongs to Whitmore Holdings, as does the car. Your things will be packed and sent wherever you land." Aunt Patricia gasped or pretended to. Cousin Marcus recorded everything on his phone, probably for his insufferable LinkedIn posts about tough family decisions in business. Victoria clutched Austin's hand, her face arranged in an expression of appropriate concern that didn't reach her eyes. "You can't just," Sloane started, but Father's look silenced her. "I can and I am. You want to save the world. Lena, do it on your own dime. James will escort you out." James, who'd driven me to school for 12 years, who'd taught me to parallel park in the servants' lot, wouldn't meet my eyes as he appeared at my elbow. His fingers barely touched my arm, but the message was clear. I stood, my legs surprisingly steady, and placed Grandmother May's necklace on my bread plate. "Keep it," I said. "You'll need every asset you can grab." Father's jaw tightened, the only sign I'd hit a nerve. He knew about the trust. Of course he did. The walk to the door felt eternal. My heels clicked on Italian marble, past the Chagall in the entry, the Rodin sketch in the powder room hall. The December wind hit like a slap when James opened the door. Lake Michigan's particular brand of cold that finds every gap in your clothing. I had my phone cracked screen, but mine and my wallet with $43 cash and a debit card to an account with $212 that they couldn't touch because I'd opened it myself at 18. Rebellious even then. "Miss Lena," James whispered as I passed, pressing something into my hand. A business card, Arthur Ames, senior partner, Halbrook and Ames. On the back, his handwriting, "Your grandmother was smarter than they think." The door closed with the definitive sound of good wood and better insulation. Through the window, I could see them raising their glasses again, the conversation resuming before I'd even reached the sidewalk, Austin laughing at something Father said, Mother directing the staff with small gestures, Sloane staring at her plate. The Uber driver who picked me up at the corner I couldn't afford surge pricing from the mansion's door didn't comment on my designer dress or the tears I wasn't crying. This was Chicago. He'd seen worse Sunday nights in Gold Coast. "Where to?" he asked. I gave him Jade's address in Logan Square, watching the fare estimate eat into my dwindling funds. Outside, the city sparkled with expensive promise I no longer had access to. But in my hand, Arthur's card felt like possibility, like Grandmother May reaching through time to remind me that Whitmore money came with Whitmore chains, and maybe, just maybe, she'd left me a key. The email arrived at 6:43 a.m. while I was lying on Jade's couch listening to the L train rattle past her Logan Square apartment. Notice of lease termination, guarantor withdrawal. 30 days to vacate. The property management company's logo, a subsidiary of Whitmore Holdings, naturally mocked me from the screen. Coffee. Jade appeared in mismatched pajamas, her law school debt manifesting in the careful way she measured grounds for her French press. "You can stay as long as you need," but I couldn't. Her studio was barely 500 square feet, and she was already sleeping next to her bar exam materials. I scrolled through Craigslist instead, watching my price range shrink from River North to Rogers Park to places that required 3 bus transfers. The document review job came through a law school contact who pitied me enough not to ask questions. $27 an hour at a windowless office in Skokie, reviewing discovery for a pharmaceutical lawsuit. 8 hours of highlighting relevant emails, my eyes burning from fluorescent lights and the realization that my Columbia law degree had led me here. I started selling things that afternoon. The Eames chair replica went first $300 to a vintage dealer who knew it was worth twice that, but also knew desperation when she saw it. My designer bags became rent money at luxury garage sale, where the saleswoman's sympathy felt worse than contempt. The shoes went to Buffalo Exchange, the jewelry to a pawn shop on Milwaukee Avenue where bars protected the windows and the owner spoke through bulletproof glass. This real. He held Grandmother May's pearl earrings to the light, not the sapphire necklace that was still on my bread plate in Gold Coast, but the smaller pieces she'd given me for graduations and birthdays. Yes, 400. They were worth 4,000, but I took the cash and added it to my envelope system, rent, food, transportation, emergency. I'd learned budgeting from YouTube videos at 3 a.m., the same hours I used to spend reviewing contracts for seminars I'd never now attend. My grocery receipts became a record of the fall organic free-range to regular eggs to the expired ones from the discount rack, Whole Foods to Jewel Osco to Aldi, where I learned that $1.29 could buy pasta that tasted like survival. My hands, which had never touched anything harsher than La Mer cream, cracked from the generic dish soap at the document review office kitchen. The CTA card replaced Uber, and I memorized the bus routes like litigation strategies. The 22 down Clark, the 80 to the office, the Blue Line when I had an extra 75 cents for speed. I watched Chicago differently from public transit, not the skyline views from Lower Wacker, but the street-level struggle. The tired faces heading to third shifts, the calculation in everyone's eyes at the grocery store. Then, on a Thursday, when my bank balance read $68.42, the second email arrived. Arthur Ames at Halbrook and Ames. The subject line deliberately vague, urgent matter regarding educational housing provisions. I read it standing in the Aldi parking lot. My groceries, $17 worth melting in the unseasonable January thaw. Ms. Whitmore, Your presence is requested regarding a fiduciary matter that requires immediate attention. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience. Fiduciary, educational housing, legal terms dancing around something bigger. I called from Jade's apartment that night, after she'd gone to her restaurant shift. Lena. Arthur's voice carried 40 years of managing Whitmore secrets. We need to meet, not at my office somewhere neutral. Are you familiar with the Goddess and Grocer on Dearborn? I can't afford my treat. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. There are things about your grandmother's estate you need to know. I wore my last good suit, the one I'd hidden at Jade's before the eviction. The coffee shop hummed with loop workers on early lunch, and Arthur had chosen a corner table away from windows. He looked older than at family events, or maybe I was just seeing him clearly for the first time. Your grandmother established a trust in 1998, he said without preamble, sliding a folder across the table. Separate from the family holdings. She knew your father's nature, even then. The documents swam before me. Irrevocable Educational Housing Trust, $2.1 million, maturity upon college completion or age 30. My name in legal black and white, beyond their reach, or so Grandmother May had believed. Then why, look at page 12, the trustee signatures. Gregory Whitmore, Vivian Whitmore. Their names on withdrawal authorizations, loan documents, a paper trail of financial manipulation that made my stomach turn. They'd been borrowing against it for years, using my future as collateral for present deals. This is illegal. Illegal and proving it are different things. They're counting on you not having resources to fight. Arthur's fingers drummed on the table, a nervous tell I'd never seen before. But there's more. They're moving to dissolve the trust entirely, claiming you've violated the educational purpose by choosing public interest law. The hearing is in 3 weeks. 3 weeks? $68 wouldn't buy 3 hours of legal representation. Why are you telling me this? He met my eyes for the first time. Because your grandmother was the only Whitmore who ever thanked my staff by name. Because she'd haunt me if I didn't. And because... He paused, choosing words carefully. Because I'm 73 years old, and I'd like to do one right thing before I retire. The folder contained everything: account statements, email chains, board meeting minutes where my trust was discussed like a line item, evidence of my family's betrayal, organized with legal precision. You'll need your own lawyer, Arthur said. Someone hungry, someone they can't buy. I can't represent you conflict of interest, but I can point you in the right direction. He wrote a name on a napkin: Dana Kaplan, specialist in trust litigation, office in Uptown where the rent was cheap and the lawyers were fierce. I left with the folder clutched against my chest, my mind calculating angles like chess moves. The document review job would pay for initial consultations. The evidence was solid, and somewhere in the Gold Coast. My parents were probably raising glasses over another deal, never imagining that their discarded daughter was learning to use their own weapons against them. The L train carried me north, every rattle a reminder that I was no longer cushioned from the city's harsh edges. But for the first time since that dinner, I felt something beyond survival instinct. Grandmother May had left me more than money. She'd left me a chance at justice. Dana Kaplan's office occupied the 3rd floor of a building where the elevator worked half the time and the radiators clanged like angry ghosts. But her eyes, when she reviewed the documents, held the kind of hunger Arthur had promised, the hunger of someone who'd clawed their way up from South Side public schools to Northwestern law on merit alone. They've been using your trust as a private ATM, she said, spreading the papers across her scratched conference table. Look here, October 2022. $700,000 moved to temporary holdings that coincidentally matched a shortfall in the Whitmore Legacy Foundation. December 2023. Another $400,000 for administrative costs that align with their River North development when the construction loan got delayed. Each transaction felt like discovering another bruise. My inheritance, meant for education and housing, had become their slush fund for image management and cash flow crises. The legal violation is clear, Dana continued, pulling up Illinois statutes on her laptop. breach of fiduciary duty, self-dealing, failure to provide accountings. But your father's lawyers will argue you violated the trust's educational purpose by choosing public interest law over corporate practice. That's ridiculous. That's strategy. They'll claim Northside Justice Clinic isn't education but activism. They'll paint you as the ungrateful daughter who bit the hand that fed her. She leaned back, assessing me. The question is, how far do you want to take this? I thought of the $43 in my wallet, the document review job that barely covered groceries, Jade's couch that couldn't be a permanent solution. All the way? Then we need more than legal arguments. We need leverage. Dana pulled out a legal pad, her handwriting sharp as her presence. The Whitmore Legacy Foundation. It's a 501c3. Write public filings, board minutes, donor lists, all technically public information. My mother runs it like her personal kingdom. Galas at the Peninsula, her picture in Modern Luxury Chicago every month. Exactly. Image is everything to them. So we make this about more than money, we make it about reputation. Over the next 2 weeks, we built our case like architects of destruction. I spent days at the Harold Washington Library, pulling every public filing the foundation had submitted. Dana filed FOIA requests with surgical precision. We mapped the money flows my trust to the foundation to PR firms to society photographers who made sure the Whitmores looked philanthropic while pillaging my future. The pattern emerged in spreadsheets and highlighted emails they'd been using my trust as a bridge loan system, moving money in when they needed liquidity, theoretically replacing it before quarterly reports. Except the replacements came from other restricted funds, a shell game of fiduciary violations. This email particularly, Dana pointed to a message from my mother to their CFO, where she explicitly says, use the L Trust for now, we'll restructure after the gala. L Trust, that's yours. Lena. I also found allies in unexpected places. Jade connected me to a friend at Chicago Tribune who covered nonprofit scandals. Arthur, while maintaining plausible deniability, happened to leave relevant documents at the coffee shop where we accidentally met. Even Sloan, through carefully worded texts from a burner phone, provided intel on family movements. Dad's freaking out, she wrote at 2:15 a.m. Austin's merger might fall through if there's litigation noise. The revelation about Austin's vulnerability changed everything. His engagement to Victoria wasn't just social climbing, it was an $800 million real estate consolidation that required pristine reputations and sterling credit ratings. Any whiff of financial impropriety could spook the institutional investors. We don't file the lawsuit, Dana said, a strategic gleam in her eye. We file a notice of intent to file. Let them see what's coming. Make them come to us. The notice was a masterpiece of legal intimidation. 27 pages outlining causes of action breach of fiduciary duty, conversion, fraud, unjust enrichment, demands for immediate accounting, forensic audit, removal as trustees, and surcharge, meaning they'd have to pay back everything with interest from their personal assets. We sent it to Halbrook and Ames on a Wednesday at 4:30 p.m., timed so Gregory would receive it during his traditional bourbon hour at the Chicago Club. The response came in 12 hours. Not a legal filing, but a phone call from Arthur. They want to meet, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Saturday, my office, 9 a.m. They're bringing their litigation team from Kirkland and Ellis. So, Kirkland and Ellis, where first-year associates made more than most Americans' lifetime earnings, where a partner's hourly rate could pay my rent for 2 months. Good, Dana said when I told her. They're scared. Scared enough to bring $800 an hour lawyers to a Saturday meeting. I spent Friday night preparing, fueled by gas station coffee and righteous fury. We organized our evidence into trial exhibits, tabbed and cross-referenced, the trust documents, the emails, the foundation's tax filings with their discrepancies highlighted in yellow. Remember, Dana coached, you're not asking for your money. You're demanding return of stolen assets. You're not the rebellious daughter. You're the beneficiary enforcing legal obligations. But beneath the legal strategy, I kept thinking about Grandmother May. She'd built her own fortune before marrying into the Whitmores, something my father never acknowledged. She'd seen this coming, seen who her son really was, and tried to protect me. Saturday morning arrived gray and bitter, the kind of Chicago cold that makes April feel like fiction. I wore my last good suit again, now my only suit, and walked into battle carrying evidence of my family's crimes in a banker's box from Office Depot. The war for my inheritance and my integrity was about to begin. The plan crystallized over lukewarm dim sum in Chinatown, where Dana and I could strategize without risk of running into anyone from my former life. She'd brought her laptop and a portable printer, transforming the sticky table into a war room. 3 objectives, she said, creating columns on her legal pad. First, recover your trust with full accounting and surcharge. Second, protect you from retaliation through the media or legal community. Third, and this is where we get creative, force them into a position where fighting you costs more than settling. The Austin merger, I said. Exactly. But we need more than threats. We need documentation that makes their investors nervous. She pulled up the Whitmore Legacy Foundation's website. All glossy photos of my mother handing oversized checks to grateful recipients. This foundation, it's their reputation laundering machine. What if we could prove it's also been their financial washing machine? The strategy took shape like a 3-dimensional chess game. We wouldn't just demand my trust back. We'd expose the systematic commingling of funds that made every Whitmore financial entity legally questionable. The foundation, the holding company, the trust, all tangled in a web of improper transfers that would take years and millions to untangle in court. I need inside information, I said. Board minutes, donor communications, the real books, not the sanitized versions they file publicly. That's when Arthur's conscience fully activated. A USB drive appeared in my library study carrel, no note attached, containing 5 years of internal foundation documents. The metadata showed they'd been accessed from his terminal, but he maintained perfect deniability. Reading them felt like performing an autopsy on my family's ethics. Board meetings where they discussed using restricted donations for unrestricted purposes, events that cost 3 times what they raised, the deficit covered by mysterious administrative transfers. And there, in meeting minutes from 14 months ago, discussion of temporary reallocation from the Whitmore Educational Trust to cover the Harrison Avenue property assessment. My trust had paid their property taxes. Dana crafted our approach with surgical precision. We file a complaint with the Attorney General's office about the foundation not mentioning your trust specifically. Just concerned citizen stuff about financial irregularities. That triggers an audit. Meanwhile, we petition the probate court for emergency injunction on your trust, freezing all assets until proper accounting. Won't that take months? Not if we time it right. She pulled up Austin's engagement announcement in the Tribune's society pages. The merger closes in 6 weeks. Due diligence is happening now. 1 whiff of AG investigation plus frozen assets in litigation, and those New York investment banks will run like they're being chased by the SEC. We built our coalition carefully. Jade reached out to legal aid organizations who'd been promised Whitmore Foundation grants that never materialized. I connected with a forensic accountant who'd been blackballed by my father's firm for being too thorough. Even found a retired IRS investigator who reviewed our evidence pro bono because he hated seeing nonprofits abused. The media strategy required delicate handling. We couldn't go public without triggering defamation claims, but we could create strategic visibility. A blog post about nonprofit financial transparency that didn't name names but described patterns anyone in Chicago philanthropy would recognize. An op-ed in Cranes about the importance of independent trustees for family foundations. Breadcrumbs that reporters could follow if they chose. Sloan became an unexpected asset, feeding me information through an elaborate system of coffee shop Wi-Fi and encrypted messages. Mom's hired crisis PR. She texted one night at 1:47 Ma'am. Edelman, the big guns. Also, Austin's fiancé's family is asking questions about the foundation audit rumors. The audit rumors we'd carefully seeded through 3 separate sources. I documented everything meticulously, creating what Dana called a litigation Bible. Every email, every transfer, Every violated statute annotated and cross-referenced. We built charts showing the circular flow of money, my trust at the center like a heart pumping blood to organs that were slowly killing it. "You realize," Dana said during one late-night session, "they'll try to destroy you if this goes public. Your reputation, your career prospects, everything." I thought about the document review job, the expired eggs, the cracked hands from cheap soap. They already did that. Now I'm returning the favor. Legally. We set up safeguards, copies of everything in multiple locations, a dead man's switch if something happened to me. Everything would go to the Tribune, Sun-Times, and Better Business Bureau simultaneously. Recording apps on my phone for any surprise encounters, legal in Illinois as long as I was party to the conversation. The final piece came from an unexpected source, a Whitmore Foundation board member named Eleanor Hastings, old money from Winnetka who'd served with Grandmother May on various committees. "Your grandmother suspected this would happen," she said when we met at her Lake Forest estate. "She asked me to watch out for you, but I'm ashamed to say I've been passive too long." She handed me a sealed envelope dated 3 years before Grandmother May's death. Inside, a handwritten letter. "My dear Lena, if you're reading this, they've shown their true colors. The trust is yours alone, I made sure of that. Don't let them steal your future to finance their present. Fight smart, fight clean, but fight. Love, Grandmother May." With the letter was a document I'd never seen, the original trust agreement, with a clause explicitly stating that any trustee who used funds for personal benefit would forfeit all rights to the Whitmore estate. She knew, Eleanor said. She built in a poison pill. If they touched your money, they lose everything when she died. My parents had violated the exact clause that would disinherit them from Grandmother May's personal fortune still in probate, worth approximately $18 million. "This changes everything," Dana breathed when I showed her. "This isn't just about your $2 million. This is about them losing 20 times that." We recalibrated our strategy. The goal wasn't just recovery anymore. It was complete victory. We would give them one chance to settle quietly, returning my trust and accepting responsibility. If they refused, we'd trigger a cascade of consequences that would unravel their empire thread by thread. The meeting was set for the following Monday. Dana prepared our demand package like an artist preparing for a gallery opening. Every document perfect, every argument precisely positioned. "Ready?" she asked as we reviewed our materials one last time. I thought of Grandmother May's letter, now laminated and in my wallet. Ready to give them exactly what they deserve. The conference room at Hallbrook and Ames felt like a mausoleum of mahogany and leather, designed to intimidate. Gregory and Vivian Whitmore sat across from us, flanked by 3 lawyers from Kirkland and Ellis whose billable hours were ticking like a taximeter. My mother wore her armor Chanel suit, grandmother's pearls, the expression she used for firing servants. "This is extortion," Gregory opened, not bothering with pleasantries. "You're trying to embarrass your family for choosing responsibility over enabling your activism." I set my phone on the table. Recording app visible. "Illinois is a one-party consent state. I'm recording this for accuracy." The Kirkland lawyers exchanged glances. They'd have advised against this meeting if they'd known I'd come prepared. Dana slid our first folder across the table. "Extortion requires threats. We're presenting evidence of embezzlement. Page 3 shows the October transfer from Ms. Whitmore's trust to foundation accounts. Page 7 shows those same funds used for the River North property assessment. That's conversion of restricted funds." "Temporary reallocation," the lead Kirkland lawyer corrected. "With intention to repay." Page 12, Dana continued, unperturbed, "shows similar temporary reallocations going back 4 years. Never repaid, just shuffled to other restricted funds. That pattern demonstrates intent to permanently deprive." I watched my father's jaw tighten as he read. He hadn't expected us to have internal documents, the real ones that showed the Foundation's true financial gymnastics. "Where did you get these?" Vivian's voice could have frozen Lake Michigan. "Discovery will be fascinating." Dana said instead of answering. Subpoenas to every board member, every donor, every recipient organization. The Tribune is already sniffing around the foundation's overhead ratios. That was my cue. I pulled out my phone, showing them the draft blog post titled, "When Charity Begins and Ends at Home, a Chicago Foundation Case Study." No names, but every detail specific enough that anyone in their circle would know. "You wouldn't dare," Mother said. "I'm working minimum wage document review while you use my inheritance to maintain appearances. Try me." The room crackled with tension until Austin spoke from the doorway I hadn't heard him enter. "The Pemberton lawyers are asking about foundation liability insurance." His face was flushed, tie askew. Someone sent them an anonymous tip about potential AG investigation. Gregory turned on Dana. "You're behind this." "We're behind nothing," she replied calmly. "We can't control what concerned citizens report to authorities. However, we can control how this proceeds. Option 1 litigation, public filings, depositions under oath, forensic accounting that will take years and cost millions. Option 2, mediation and settlement, private, sealed, resolved before the merger closes." "You want money?" Gregory said flatly. "How much?" "I want my money," I corrected. "Every penny of the original trust, plus interest, plus damages for breach of fiduciary duty. But more than that, I pulled out Grandmother May's letter, keeping the poison pill clause hidden. I want accountability." I'd practiced this part with Dana, keeping my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "You'll transfer the trust to an independent trustee immediately. You'll resign from the foundation board, and you'll establish a 10-year binding commitment to fund actual housing justice initiatives, not your reputation-laundering galas." "Absolutely not." Gregory stood. "I'll bury you in litigation until you're begging." "Gregory." Arthur Ames entered, his presence commanding despite his age. "May I remind you that as your counsel, I'm obligated to advise you of all risks." He set down a folder marked "Confidential," including the clause in May Whitmore's will regarding trustee malfeasance. The color drained from my father's face. He knew exactly what clause Arthur meant, the one that would cost him $18 million if proven. "You knew?" He turned on Arthur with fury. "I know all my clients' documents. I'm advising you now that fighting this would be inadvisable." Arthur's tone was perfectly professional, but I caught the ghost of satisfaction in his eyes. Vivian grabbed the confidential folder, scanning rapidly. Her Botox couldn't hide the shock. "This is impossible. May wouldn't—" "May did," I said quietly. "She knew exactly who you were, and she protected me." The Kirkland lawyers huddled, whispering urgently. The lead one finally spoke. "We need to consult with our clients privately." Dana and I waited in the reception area, her hand briefly squeezing mine. "You did perfectly. That recording comment brilliant. They can't threaten you now without it being evidence." 20 minutes later, we were called back. Gregory looked like he'd aged 5 years. "We'll offer half the trust value." $1 million, clean settlement." "No, you're being unreasonable. I'm being precise. Full value, plus $500,000 in damages, plus the foundation commitment, or we file Monday morning and let the Tribune know why." Austin stepped forward. "Lena, please. The merger. The merger you built on stolen money. My stolen money." I met his eyes, seeing the golden boy who'd always gotten everything while I fought for scraps. "I passed the bar studying on public buses while you celebrated with champagne I paid for. Full settlement or full exposure? Choose." The silence stretched until Vivian broke. "Give her what she wants. All of it." Gregory's protest died as she showed him something on her phone, probably the merger contract's reputation clause. "We'll need a non-disclosure agreement," the Kirkland lawyer said. "No NDA on the financial crimes," Dana countered. "We'll agree not to publicize the settlement terms, but if authorities investigate independently, Ms. Whitmore cooperates fully." They had no choice. Austin's merger, the foundation's reputation. Grandmother May's will we'd built a perfect trap using their own greed as bait. "Draw up the papers," Gregory said, his voice hollow. "I want this resolved within 72 hours. As we packed our documents, I made one final move. The housing justice commitment. I want Northside Justice Clinic as the named beneficiary, $100,000 annually for 10 years. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The organization they'd disowned me for joining would now be funded by their money. Walking out, I heard Gregory say to Vivian, "How did we not see this coming?" "Because you never really saw me at all." I thought. "Not until I learned to speak your language, money, leverage, and perfectly legal revenge." The settlement documents arrived within 48 hours. But Gregory wasn't done fighting. The Whisper campaign started immediately calls to hiring partners at white shoe firms, lunches at the Union League Club where my instability was discussed over aged whiskey, my LinkedIn inbox filled with canceled interviews, withdrawn offers, polite rejections from firms that had pursued me months earlier. Lena Whitmore. Brilliant mind, but family troubles? You understand. I understood perfectly. They were trying to starve me into submission before the settlement was finalized. Dana forwarded me an email she'd received from a concerned colleague suggesting I might benefit from psychological evaluation. The Northside Justice Clinic got a call questioning whether someone with family litigation issues was suitable for vulnerable clients. Even my document review supervisor mentioned hearing concerning things through the legal community. "They're trying to make you radioactive," Jade said, reading the latest rejection email over my shoulder. Classic scorched earth. But I'd expected this. Every Whisper campaign leaves tracks, and I'd been recording calls, saving emails, documenting the pattern. When Gregory's golf buddy Richard Brennan called to, informally, suggest I might want to reconsider the settlement terms, I had him on speaker with Dana listening. "Your father's a reasonable man, Lena. Push too hard and, well, Chicago's a small legal community." "Are you threatening my career prospects, Mr. Brennan?" "Of course not. Just noting that reputation matters in this business." "I'll note that too. Have a good day." The small legal community worked both ways. Dana leaked selective information to the right people not about the settlement, but about the Whisper campaign itself. The Women's Bar Association of Illinois had strong opinions about established attorneys blackballing young female lawyers. The Chicago Bar Association's Ethics Committee found targeted reputation destruction troubling. Then Sloan provided unexpected ammunition. "Dad's been having meetings at home," she texted from her burner phone at 2:33 a.m. "Not business personal lawyers. Mom doesn't know." The next morning, a courier delivered papers to my document review office, a motion to void Grandmother May's poison pill clause, claiming undue influence and diminished capacity. Gregory was trying to protect the $18 million by attacking his own mother's mental state posthumously. "This is disgusting," Dana said when I showed her. "He's claiming May was manipulated into adding that clause. By whom? By you? Says you poisoned her against the family during her final years?" The rage that filled me was cold, precise. They'd kicked me out, stolen my inheritance, tried to destroy my career, but attacking Grandmother May's memory crossed a line I didn't know I had. I called Arthur directly. "Did my grandmother have capacity when she updated her will?" "Absolutely. I have 3 doctor's assessments, video recordings of her explaining her intentions, and contemporary notes showing she was sharper than most people half her age." He paused. "I also have 40 years of documentation showing your father's pattern of financial manipulation. If he wants to open that door in probate court, send it all to Dana. Everything." The next 72 hours became a strategic bombing campaign. Dana filed a bar complaint against Brennan for attempted intimidation. I sent cease and desist letters to everyone participating in the Whisper campaign, copied to their firm's managing partners. The foundation received notice that any breach of settlement terms would trigger immediate disclosure to the Attorney General. But the masterpiece was the press release I drafted and held in reserve. Whitmore family challenges matriarch's mental capacity to protect assets from fraud claims. I sent it to Gregory with a simple note. Ready to send at 3 p.m. Unless all harassment stops immediately. The foundation's PR firm called within an hour. Then Austin called, panicked about the merger. Finally, Vivian herself. "You've made your point," she said, her voice stripped of its usual hauteur. "Have I because your husband just tried to desecrate his mother's memory to save money he stole from me? The probate filing will be withdrawn. The settlement will proceed as agreed. And the whisper campaign." A pause. "What whisper campaign? I'm not aware of any coordinated efforts against your career." "Good. Because if I lose even one opportunity due to family interference, that press release goes wide, along with documentation of the trust theft, the foundation irregularities, and every email your husband sent trying to coordinate my professional destruction. You've become quite ruthless. I learned from the best. Mother." She hung up without another word. The public phase began subtly. A small item in Cranes about the Whitmore Foundation's restructuring and new commitment to housing justice. A LinkedIn post from Dana celebrating our successful trust litigation resolution. Nothing that violated the settlement, but enough that people started asking questions. Eleanor Hastings, Grandmother May's friend, hosted a lunch at the casino club where she pointedly mentioned how proud May would be of my work at Northside Justice. The managing partner of a boutique firm specializing in trust litigation called, having heard I might be available. The whispers began flowing in a different direction. Then something unexpected, an email from the Attorney General's office. They'd received multiple reports about foundation irregularities and would be conducting a review. Did I have any relevant information? I forwarded the email to Gregory with 2 words, "Your move." The response came through Arthur, "Complete capitulation." The settlement funds would be transferred immediately, the foundation commitment would be accelerated, and there would be a formal statement supporting my work at Northside Justice, signed by both parents. The day the wire transfer hit $2.6 million, my trust plus damages, I was reviewing pharmaceutical documents in Skokie. The notification popped up on my phone between highlighting emails about side effects. My coworker asked if I was okay. I'd apparently stopped breathing. "Just got some good news," I managed. That evening, I met Dana at the Goddess and Grocer where this had all started. She'd brought champagne, real champagne, not the gas station Prosecco I'd been drinking at Jade's. "You know they'll never forgive you," she said after the toast. "I know." I thought about the family dinners I'd never attend, the connections lost, the Whitmore name that would now be a battlefield instead of a birthright. But Grandmother May would understand. What's next? I pulled up the Northside Justice Clinic website, showing her the housing rights cases they were working on. I start Monday, full-time, no more document review, and the first case I'm taking a family in Uptown whose landlord is trying to evict them using falsified documents. Dana laughed. "From Whitmore millions to tenant law? From fighting my family's corruption to fighting it everywhere else," I corrected. "They taught me that power without accountability is theft. Now I get to use that lesson against people just like them." The champagne tasted like victory, but also like goodbye to the life I'd been raised for, the family I'd lost, the easier path I'd never take. But sitting in that coffee shop with my hard-won freedom, I felt Grandmother May's presence like a blessing. The Whitmores had built an empire on other people's losses. I'd build something better on the ashes of their greed. The 72 hours before the mediation moved with surgical precision. Dana and I worked from her office, transforming it into a command center with whiteboards mapping every financial connection, timelines of trust violations, and photographs of key documents taped to the walls like evidence in a detective's case room. "We need maximum pressure from multiple angles," Dana said, marking X's on a calendar. "The settlement is done, but they're stalling on the foundation commitment. Time to squeeze." The first move came Monday at 9 a.m. sharp. Dana filed our petition to remove trustees with the probate court, accompanied by 47 pages of exhibits documenting every unauthorized transfer, every breach of fiduciary duty. We didn't just request their removal. We demanded a full forensic accounting going back 7 years, with costs charged to Gregory and Vivian personally. "The beauty is," Dana explained, "even if they settle before the hearing, This filing is public record. Every investor doing due diligence on Austin's merger will find it within 3 hours. We had our first response not from my parents, but from Pemberton Holdings' legal team requesting clarification on the Whitmore Trust litigation matter. I forwarded their email to Austin with a note, happy to provide full documentation if needed. The second move targeted the foundation's board. I sent individual letters to all 12 board members, attaching evidence of how their names had been used to authorize fraudulent transfers. The message was clear distance yourselves or share liability. By Tuesday afternoon, 3 board members had submitted resignations, citing scheduling conflicts. Eleanor Hastings, still loyal to Grandmother May's memory, made strategic calls to her own network. The Chicago Community Trust, the MacArthur Foundation, the Joyce Foundation all suddenly had concerns about partnering with Whitmore Legacy Foundation on upcoming initiatives. Wednesday brought the third move. I met with 2 institutional investors in Austin's merger at a Loop coffee shop, arranged through Dana's connection at Northwestern's Kellogg School. I didn't mention the family drama, just provided public documents about the foundation's structural challenges and the probate filing. They took notes, asked careful questions, and promised to review their position. "You're destroying them," Jade said that evening, watching me compile more documents at her kitchen table. "I'm documenting truth. They're destroying themselves." The pressure worked. Thursday at 2:15 p.m. Arthur called. "They want to meet tomorrow. Full resolution," they said. "Bring your terms." I spent Thursday night preparing our final demand package with Dana. Not just the money and foundation commitment anymore, we wanted structural change that would prevent them from ever doing this again. Independent oversight for all Whitmore trusts, I dictated while Dana typed. Annual audits by a Big Four firm, board governance reforms requiring majority independent directors, and a public statement acknowledging the trust was improperly managed. "They'll never agree to that last one," Dana warned. "Then they can explain to Austin why his merger collapsed." Friday arrived gray and sleeting, Chicago's April refusing to acknowledge spring. The mediation was scheduled at the Resolution Center in the Loop, neutral ground with soundproof rooms and security that prevented dramatic exits. I arrived to find the full Whitmore legal arsenal: 3 partners from Kirkland and Ellis, 2 from Sidley Austin, their in-house counsel, and a reputation management consultant whose Hermes bag cost more than I'd lived on for 3 months. Gregory and Vivian sat at the center like ice sculptures, Austin beside them, sweating through his Armani. The mediator, a retired federal judge named Patricia Brennan, had reviewed our submissions. Her opening statement cut straight through pleasantries. "The evidence of fiduciary breach is substantial. The question is whether we resolve this quietly or publicly. Ms. Whitmore, present your requirements." Dana slides our package across the table. Complete trust restoration plus $800,000 in surcharge that's damages for breach of duty. Immediate resignation as trustees. The foundation commitment of $100,000 annually for 10 years to Northside Justice Clinic, guaranteed by corporate bond, and governance reforms to prevent future breaches. "Absolutely not," Gregory started. "Mr. Whitmore," Judge Brennan interrupted. "I've reviewed the evidence. If this goes to trial, you're looking at criminal fraud charges, not just civil liability. Your daughter is offering you a gift private resolution." I pulled out my phone, showing them an email draft to the Tribune's investigative team. Subject line: Chicago Foundation's Trust Fund Shell Game documents attached. "Send that," Austin said desperately. "And the merger dies. $800 million. Gone. Your $800 million merger built on my stolen $2 million. I met his eyes. "I spent a month eating ramen while you celebrated with champagne bought with my inheritance. Send the email or sign the agreement." Vivian spoke for the first time. "The public statement can be vague," Dana offered. "Just acknowledge that trust management is being restructured for better governance. No admission of wrongdoing if you sign today." The Kirkland partners huddled with Gregory, whispering urgently. The reputation consultant typed frantically on her phone. Austin looked between his parents and me, calculating which relationship was worth saving. Finally, Gregory spoke, his voice aged and hollow. If we agree to everything, this ends. No future claims, no media contact, no further contact with Foundation board members. I keep my bar license, my career, and my freedom to practice law however I choose, I countered. Any interference, any whispers, any informal pressure, and everything goes public. Agreed. The next 2 hours were paperwork. Signatures, notarizations, wire transfer authorizations. I watched my parents sign away their control, their reputation, their hold over my future. Each signature was a small death of the empire they'd built on stolen foundations. The moment that broke something in me was when Vivian signed the Northside Justice Commitment. Her hand trembled slightly. The organization she'd called Enabling Criminals would now receive $1 million with her name on the transfer. Satisfied? Gregory asked when the last document was signed. No, I said honestly, but Grandmother May would be. He flinched at her name. Good. As we packed up, Austin approached. Lena, I don't. You chose your side. Live with it. Walking out of that mediation room, I felt the weight of what I'd done. I'd won everything I'd demanded: money, freedom, justice. But I'd also orphaned myself, cut the golden threads that had defined my first 29 years. Dana waited until we were in the elevator to speak. That was flawless. They had no moves left. I learned from watching them. Find the pressure point and squeeze until something breaks. I looked at my reflection in the elevator's brass doors, tired, triumphant, transformed. Except I squeezed until they broke. The elevator opened to the lobby, where spring rain had finally replaced the sleet. I had $2.6 million, a job at Northside Justice starting Monday, and absolutely no family. It was exactly what Grandmother May had prepared me for. The final signatures happened in that sterile mediation room at 3:47 p.m. on a Friday that felt like the end of the world and the beginning of everything. Judge Brennan's voice cut through the tension as she confirmed the settlement terms one last time. Trust assets of $2.6 million, transferred within 24 hours. Resignation as trustees, effective immediately. Annual payments of $100,000 to Northside Justice Clinic for 10 years, secured by corporate bond. Governance reforms as specified. Is this correct? Yes, Gregory said, his voice hollow as an empty vault. The wire transfer confirmation came through while we were still in the building. Dana showed me her phone the full amount, sitting in the new trust account with an independent trustee. Real money, my money. Finally free from Whitmore control. But it was the second email that truly marked victory. From the Whitmore Legacy Foundation's board secretary, please be advised that Gregory and Vivian Whitmore have resigned from all positions, effective immediately. The foundation commits to the agreed funding structure for housing justice initiatives. Austin stood as we prepared to leave, his merger documents clutched like a life raft. The investors are nervous. If you could just— I won't contact them further, I said. But I won't lie for you either. Your merger, your problem. Vivian hadn't spoken throughout the signing, but as I passed her chair, she grabbed my wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop me. Your grandmother would be ashamed, she whispered. I pulled free gently. Grandmother May left me that trust with a poison pill clause specifically to prevent what you did. She knew exactly who you were. The only shame here is yours. The walk to the elevator felt eternal. Gregory's voice followed me. You've destroyed your family for money. I turned back one last time. You destroyed our family for money. I just documented it. The elevator doors closed on their faces, my parents, reduced to strangers with familiar features. Donna waited until we reached the street to speak. You did it. Full victory. Then why do I feel empty? Because winning doesn't erase the betrayal. But tomorrow, you start at Northside Justice. You'll help families facing the same kind of powerful people who tried to crush you. That's not empty, that's purpose. The rain had stopped, and a late afternoon sun broke through the clouds. painting the loop in gold. My phone buzzed with messages. Jade celebrating. Arthur Ames saying Grandmother May would be proud. Even Sloane. From her real number now. You did what I never could. Maybe coffee sometime. I walked to Millennium Park, needing space to breathe. The bean reflected the city in its perfect distortion, beautiful and warped simultaneously. Just like the life I'd built from the wreckage. Tourists took photos while I sat on a bench, reading the settlement agreement one more time. Every clause was a small victory. The independent trustee. The foundation reforms. The guaranteed funding for people who needed lawyers like I'd needed Dana. 10 years of Whitmore money flowing to housing justice, probably more than they'd ever given to real charity in their entire lives. My phone rang. Unknown number. But I recognized the voice immediately. Victoria Pemberton, Austin's fiancée. The merger's off, she said without preamble. The investigators found too many irregularities. Austin's blaming you. Austin should blame the people who created the irregularities. That's why I'm calling. I'm breaking the engagement. And I wanted to say what you did took courage. Real courage. The call ended, leaving me staring at Lake Michigan. Another casualty of Whitmore greed, though Victoria sounded more relieved than devastated. The next morning, I started at Northside Justice Clinic. My first client was a 73-year-old woman whose landlord was trying to evict her through forged documents. The same kind of paper manipulation my family had used on my trust, just with less expensive lawyers. "Can you help me?" she asked, her hands shaking as she showed me the false notices. "Absolutely," I said, opening my new laptop, purchased with money that had finally found its way home. "Let me tell you exactly how we're going to fight this." As I worked, I thought about Grandmother May. She'd built her fortune honestly, married into the Whitmore name, then watched her son corrupt everything she'd valued. But she'd seen me, really seen me, and built a fortress of legal documents to protect my future. The trust money would buy me freedom, a modest apartment in Logan Square, a reliable car, the ability to work for justice instead of billable hours. The foundation payments would keep Northside Justice running for a decade, and the governance reforms might prevent other Whitmore heirs from facing what I had. 3 months later, I received a final letter from Arthur Ames. He was retiring, he said, but wanted me to know something. The Attorney General's investigation had expanded. The Whitmore Legacy Foundation was under full audit. Gregory and Vivian were liquidating assets to pay penalties. The empire was crumbling, brick by brick. I didn't celebrate. There was no joy in watching my family's destruction. Only the grim satisfaction of justice served cold and precisely measured. They'd taught me that power without accountability was theft. I'd simply returned the lesson, with interest. My grandmother's letter stays in my wallet, laminated and worn from touching. Her words remind me daily, fight smart, fight clean, but fight. I did. Grandmother May, I fought with everything you gave me, not just the money, but the wisdom to protect it and the courage to demand justice. The Whitmores still have their Gold Coast mansion, their club memberships, their pictures in society pages. But they lost something worth more than money, the ability to prey on trust. And I gained something worth more than inheritance, the knowledge that I could survive their worst and emerge stronger. Every day at Northside Justice, I help people fight their own Whitmores, the powerful who take because they can, who steal futures to finance presents. It's hard work, often thankless, sometimes dangerous, but it's honest, it's necessary, and it's mine. The settlement agreement sits in my safe deposit box, 40 pages of legalese that spell out my freedom. But the real victory isn't in those pages or the wire transfer confirmations. It's in the 73-year-old woman who kept her apartment, the family who won their security deposit back, the tenants who learned their rights. Grandmother May didn't just leave me money. She left me a chance to choose differently, to break the Whitmore cycle of exploitation. Every case I take, every client I help, is a small redemption of the family name, not for them, but for her. For the woman who saw this coming and loved me enough to prepare me for the fight. The Whitmores cut me off to punish me for choosing justice over profit. Instead, they freed me to become what they feared most, someone with their intelligence, their resources, and absolutely none of their corruption. Someone who knows exactly how the powerful operate and uses that knowledge to defend the powerless. They were right about one thing: I'll never have a home with them again. But I built something better, a life that would make Grandmother May proud and the Whitmores tremble. And that's the greatest revenge of all. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in my situation? I read every comment and would love to hear your perspective on family, justice, and standing up for what's right.